You're listening to The Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media the podcast professionals. This podcast is about Australia's men and women coaches, the people that we entrust to develop our players and teams. And today we're honoured to have Leah Blayney, head coach of the Young Matildas, and who also leads the Future Matildas program. And we'll get into that and work out exactly what that is. Welcome along, Leah.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
No problems. Let's introduce you properly. So, Leah played her junior football up in the Blue Mountains with Wentworth Falls Warriors, I'm led to believe. Played with Westfield Sports High and was the only girl, I believe, in Macarthur Rams under-14 boys team where she played before heading off to college in the USA. Came back to Australia, played with the New South Wales Sapphires in the old WNSL, Sydney FC, Canberra United, headed back to America with the Boston Breakers, Eskilstuna United, DFF. Is that right? Did I pronounce that close to being right in Sweden?
Very good Swedish.
Played with the under-19s, the Young Matildas, at a women's under-19 World Championships in Thailand, played with the Young Matildas, the under-20 team in a World Cup in Russia, played 16 games with the Matildas, and I saw that Tom Samani called you up as a 20-year-old to go and play in an Asian Cup, where we were runners-up behind China. Before an ankle injury, I believe, cut short her playing career, and she moved across into coaching. An amazing coaching career thus far for someone that's, if we cut you in half and count those coaching circles, still very young in coaching ages. But Leah's had a wonderful coaching career already, including Macarthur Rams, Westfield Sports High, where she's currently a full-time teacher, assistant coach, West Sydney Wanderers, NSWIS Football New South Wales, the NTC program, been an assistance coach through the Football Australia Female Coach Mentor program, been to the Rio Olympics and the France World Cup as an analyst and a scout, and of course is now currently the head coach of the Young Matildas. Big introduction. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, and some certainly excellent experiences along the way, both as a player and a coach.
Yeah, look, this isn't about your playing career, but we always sort of get the ball rolling and just talk about that because that's normally where our love of the game comes from. So where did your love of football begin and how did that happen?
It definitely started with my grassroots club at Wentworth Falls United Soccer Club. I think that's where a lot of players' journeys begin, and we probably don't give enough credit to those arenas. So it definitely started there. I was the only girl in the club for most of my time there. Another girl joined, and there was only 2 females within the whole club. So that's sort of how I've started. And amongst playing games there and everything like that, there was a ball wall at the end of the pitch that I probably spent half my weekend on, and then the other half of the weekend was actually playing in games. So, it's that environment that made me fall in love with football. The support of the coaches, my parents, those sort of people really got me rolling.
Yeah. I think I read or heard somewhere that your dad might have flipped a trampoline up and painted some numbers on it. So you had a bit of a target in the front yard or the backyard?
Yeah, look, I know, and this probably isn't going to be good for their branding. There's a whole lot of different equipment around these days that can be purchased, but from a pretty average family who did their best, and my parents gave us kids everything they could. The trampoline, once it got a hole in it, flipped on its side, a target spray painted on it, and voila, you've got a player who becomes both-footed.
Yeah. And it's great. And you hear the stories of a golden generation of men and women. And in so many of the cases, so much of that early love came from kicking the ball around with brothers and sisters or mums and dads in the backyard, and lots of practice, which perhaps doesn't happen quite as often with some of the kids coming through today.
Yeah, look, I definitely think we have a lot more structure in place for players, and I'm a person who's a strong believer in multi-sport athletes, right? So I've spoken about as a kid engaged in soccer a lot, but I also would play foursomes back AFL games on the road with the kids in the street and be jumping fences and running around the neighborhood, climbing trees and those sort of things. And I dare say that all adds to your overall athleticism.
Yeah. Yeah, and that athleticism for you took you through the junior programs, and then off to a couple of youth world championships. That must have been one, fantastic to play in that, but at the time, with the challenges of not a great deal of access for young female players, how was that, and how were those experiences for you?
Yeah, so my experiences later on in going into youth national teams was something that I was always a lot younger. So I actually got picked in our Matildas before I got picked in our young Matildas, which was something that was quite interesting. And I went into our Matildas environment, and a fantastic role model in Di Allegich took me under her wing. And as a younger player, having someone like her there to support me, and we're still great colleagues today, and she's somebody who's fantastic in the game. That sort of helped in that transition. At a younger age, I was always used to sort of going into environments that might have been a little bit of a stretch. You mentioned MacArthur Rams. I was the only girl playing in the NPL, what they would call boys, but it was mixed because I played in it, right? Competition. So it's something I've always been used to doing from a young age, and I seem to thrive in those arenas.
Yeah. So how did Tom Samani, who I think gave you Matildas, gave you a start in the Matildas? If you hadn't played for the young Matildas, how did Tom Samani find you and give you a gig at that Asian Cup?
Yeah, look, well, so previously I'd gone in under Adrian Sandtrack. We actually were a part of an institute team at Valentine Sports Park, where Alan Stajic was the coach of a lot of us youngsters who have gone on and represented our country. And we got invited down to play against the Matildas in Canberra. And we went down there, a bunch of young kids, and I think Stadge probably drove the bus down there, knowing him. And we took it to them, and we did really well. And, it was myself and players like Kylie Ledbrook. And from there, I believe it was Sandtrack who actually picked me up to go into a Matilda's camp at 16. And that was it. I sort of, that's how I got identified, really. As a youngster, I was always identified in different things, and that's not the be all and end all, because under 12s, I was actually cut from the local rep team. At 13, I was one of the best in the country. So getting cut at 12, probably the best thing for me, right? So it just kind of all happened from there, having a go, really.
And that took you to play in the college program in the US.
Yeah, look, I always was fairly academic and really cared about my education. At that point, there wasn't a lot of opportunities. Like, there's some excellent educational opportunities at the moment where players can still stay in Australia and balance that. I felt like if I wanted to continue to play at a high level and balance school, that the US route was the best for me. And it was an excellent experience. Everyone's pathway is going to be different, but how it worked for me, the life skills, the relationships I've formed, and to this day are still very, very close with a lot of people over there. And then obviously the opportunities to play in the professional league over there. It was a great move for me.
Yeah. Was that where you first dabbled in coaching?
Yes. So I was a college student, not on a lot of cash, on a scholarship there, but not on a lot of cash. And someone had said to me, you should pick up some additional coaching, and hopefully US Immigration aren't listening to this, but it was a cash in hand. And it was something that I could do flexible around my own training and my own study. I was initially started out in a sports psychology degree, and then I transferred into education, where I'm now a qualified teacher. So it fit in with what I did. I loved doing it, and I didn't really at the time realize why I enjoyed it. It mostly was that connection with the young players I was working with. A coach over there, Tony DeChico, who ended up becoming my Boston Breakers coach, got me working summer camps. Fantastic experience to live together with a group of coaches for a week and run camps for Connecticut.
Did you do any formal coach education through that process, or is it just really a matter of going on the camps and learning on
Yeah,
the run?
no, I didn't do any. I've been very lucky, even from when I was a player, to have some really good coaches that I've either played under, or that even now that I've been involved in their teams. So
Yeah,
yeah, there was no formal education. It wasn't something that I thought I was ever going to be a coach at that point.
yeah. So did it give you any different insights into the game? I know I was 19 and was introduced to Ronnie Smith and Eric Worthington, a couple of the old grandfathers of the coaching scheme nowadays, and because I hadn't really been coached in terms of people that could put on sessions to change your behaviours. It was sort of a light bulb moment for me. I thought they were a bit like witch doctors because that they could actually look towards building and changing the outcome of games. Was there any insight like that for you?
That's definitely happened later on in my coaching career when I started to really invest in myself and take a lot more notice of it.
Yeah,
As I said early on, the quality of coaches I've had where we were taught the principles of play, we were taught different passing techniques, ranges, dribbling, all those sort of things
yeah,
that you're exposed to at a young age by the right coach. Uh, it was a norm for me. I had
yeah,
more regular coaches who were like that than not, and for that I'm very, very fortunate.
yeah. No, I agree that the principles of play in particular seem to have got lost for a few years, but I believe that they're well and truly on their way back. So for me, that's a great blessing. So where was your first real? Sorry, you came back to Australia, played in the W League when it all kicked off, and then at 23, essentially an ankle injury, I think, sort of finished your playing career. Was that right?
Yes, correct. I suffered an injury playing for the Boston Breakers. Tried to come back from it through surgery and a couple other things. I had stem cell therapy and the whole deal to try and regrow some cartilage, but it wasn't successful. Hopefully, in the future, it's something in that stem cell therapy that will work
Yeah,
for.
yeah. So what then was your first real coaching opportunity?
So I one of my old coaches from school conned me into going out to the Proctor Cup in Bathurst to meet a bunch of players, and it's actually ironic that now some of them are in the W League, and Rosie Galea for Western Sydney and a few others have gone on to do some really good things. But it was a group of girls, and I was going out there to just got to pick their spirits up a bit. They were losing their coach, and I got extremely sunburned, and I had a fantastic day, and I watched game after game. And the next day he called me, will you come out again? And I went out again. And then the next Tuesday night, I was their full-time coach. So that's how it started. And I'm so grateful for that weekend.
Yeah. So how long did that first coaching stint last?
I believe I was at MacArthur Amps for 2 or 3 years. So I was with
Yeah.
the 14s, 15s, and then I did a little bit with their reserve grade there, and then dabbled a little bit with an assistant role at Western Sydney, where the assistant role at Western Sydney gave me a good opportunity to spend a lot of time around Tony Popovich.
Yeah.
So he, it took a good 6 months of hanging out on the fence because it's in his environment. You're only going in if you're somebody who he wants in there, which is
Yeah.
prerogative of all
Yeah.
head coaches. I'd be the
Of
same.
course.
So yeah, I'd watch a lot. I'd help out with equipment a little bit, and then I ended up in a position where I could meet with him and discuss things. And in the change room pre Sydney FC versus Western Sydney
Yeah.
in their pre-game, that's something that's huge for any coach.
Yeah.
So that teamed with my development at Westfield Sports High School. I took a gamble. I was on a temporary contract at a school, doing just that sort of PE teaching, and an opportunity at Westfield Sports High came up, and it was 3 weeks casual.
Yeah.
And Trevor Morgan I'd spoken with him, and it was give up the temporary contract to take 3 weeks casual, which was a risk. But, I had a belief in myself, and the school had a massive belief in me that I would come in and hopefully do a good job, and I've been there ever since.
It's worked out okay.
Yes. Good
So
gamble.
if you look back on your journey, how important were those early opportunities for you?
They're massive, and I go back to when I was cut in the under-12s from the team as a player. That was something that was, that's helped change sort of who I am, and that hunger and that drive and those sort of things and that maybe a little bit of that resilience, that how do you bounce back from those things? I think they're important things to happen. I think moving away from home at 18, and even when I went to Westfields early on, I moved away at 12 until year 8, and then I came back to Katoomba High School. And they're just all things that I think have helped probably shape my independence and ability to fit into different environments and adapt. Yeah.
So we normally have a good conversation about resilience a little bit later on, but let's jump into that right now. Your career finish, you mentioned moving away from home and all that. Just how important is it for coaches, obviously for players, but for coaches to develop that resilience on their journey?
Oh, it's massive. It's a part of the job. I would suggest anybody out there who thinks that that's not a massive piece, then that's a false perception of what coaching is. There's highs, there's lows. There's times where, all over social media, you may be, apparently losing your job, or, like this is speaking for coaches all over the world. That's the nature of this. You're going to apply for jobs you're not going to get. You're going to win games, lose games. Some players are going to go on to higher levels. Some aren't. It's massive that work under you. Yeah.
You're obviously teaching, and I'm just going to assume at Westfield Sports High you're teaching football most of the time. Is resilience a bit like a muscle? Is it something that you can teach people? Is it something that can grow and get stronger in people?
I think it definitely can grow. Yeah, I think some of it is innate, and if it isn't innate, a person might look for an out or an excuse. And then that won't really help you develop your resilience. I think a part of the growth is having people around who you trust to pick you up at moments where you might have had something not go your way or whatever it might be, but then also who tell you the truth, and maybe you weren't right for the job. Maybe somebody beat you to it because they're better at it. They have a better skill set. You need those people around you to build resilience, just like players need those coaches around them who are honest but consistent.
Yeah. On your journey as a player and now as a coach, which coach or coaches had the most impact on you, and why was that?
I think definitely a sum of a lot of parts on that journey, Gary. Like I said, from a young age, I've had some good people around who have helped make sure that I've developed the technical side of my game as a player well, which helps transfer now, obviously, with coaching. And in saying that, there can be a perception that a former player is going to make a good coach. Absolutely false. It may help at times with demonstrating techniques and those sort of things, but that buy-in only lasts so long if that's what you're based on. So I think there's been a lot of different people. What has been consistent on my journey has been my parents and my close friends, my small circle. So that's something that would be the most significant, their support. I mentioned Tony DeChico earlier, who at a time in my career where I was at a crossroad, had I made the right decision to go to college in the US, at 16, I was getting called into national team stuff, and then at 18, I wasn't. So, the whole thing of Australia not having a lot of international footballs at that time, being a part of football games at that time, being a part of Oceania, did I make the decision where I've walked away from being in a senior national team? He sort of reinstalled a lot of belief in myself. and a lot of love for where I wanted to be, and that was a true professional. So I think he's somebody who I saw how he cared about his players, but also the standards he held. He's won, I think, 2 Olympic Games, a couple of World Cups. I dare say he's the most decorated coach in women's football. But just to see how he treated people off the field as people was something that's significant. Early on, I had Alan Sajic for a long time, so I had him from the age of 14 to 18, amongst some other really good people within Australia who have taught me a lot about football and coaching as well. So there's a lot of people along the journey. There's not one person, and you take a little bit from all. I certainly don't think I mimic somebody or you know.
You've got to find your own way of doing it, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that, I know you were formerly in the FA Women's Coach Mentoring Program. How important is mentoring for young aspiring coaches? Maybe not just young coaches, maybe for all coaches. Is there opportunities to learn from people that are wiser?
Absolutely. I think it's an essential part of anybody's journey. So my involvement in that program was an excellent experience, a good starting point. It afforded me the opportunity to go in as the under-17 national team assistant with Ante Juric, who I learned a lot from. And, if that's my first introduction to national teams, working with somebody of his caliber, then it's a good start. And he just showed me a different way of doing things that I was used to. And again, it's just that exposure. It's having like-minded people around you. You really can't be what you can't see, I think. So that I think visibility as mentors and then just people who are professionals and leaders is so important for aspiring coaches at all levels.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Thanks for that. So then, what is coaching?
It's complex. It is enjoyable. And it's enjoyable, and aspiring coaches out there, you're at risk of catching the bug, which is essential if you want to enjoy it too, because there are ups and downs. Look, it's just supporting people along their journey, really, and then finding ways to support yourself on that journey, because I think we can get a little bit lost in our role as an educator and support network for players to reach the top level. You actually don't realize that you're that role model for others. So other coaches who begin to look up to you, who to look towards you for leadership and advice. At times you're a psychologist. I work at a level now where we have psychologists, nutrition, all those sort of things, but that's not everyone's environment. So you might be that in your environment if that's what you have. You don't have at your dispersal. So there's a lot to it, and it's an interesting job because it's certainly not one that when you finish a training session, you take off your boot, you walk away from work. It's not how coaching is. You form genuine relationships with people, and that authentic nature of it is something that I really enjoy.
Yeah. You're obviously a full-time teacher as well. Is teaching at the heart of it, do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's finding different ways to teach people. Not every learner is the same. There's not one player I have that I work with that I can say, as an example, I work with a right fullback. She's exactly like Ellie Carpenter. No way. They're all so different. They might run, close to running as quick as Ellie, and they might have to cross the ball like Ellie, but there's going to be so many different little intricacies about that person's personality, what environments they thrive in, how do they take on feedback, are they somebody you need to show video to as well as give an instruction, or can you just give them an instruction and they do it straight away? There's so much to it, and knowing your room and knowing your players, for me, is at the heart of anything that you want to become successful.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I like that. We've had a couple of chats in the last 12 months on here about in coaching the difference between aspiration and capability. For club coaches often get to spend, at the elite end almost every day with their players, sometimes more than once a day with their players. So helping players, teaching players, whether that be individually or collectively in groups, is one thing. And we can have these aspirations, and it might be in your case, you want to qualify and go and play in world championships with a group of young women. How do you deal with that between this is what we want to achieve, this is how we want to play, this is the philosophy. Right now, this is the group that we've got, and this is where we're at. How do you make that work? How do you find that balance?
As I said, we treat the playing group and the players within that group as individuals. So there's a strong emphasis in my role in Future Matildas in players going from a Future Matildas environment into the senior national team, that environment. So for us, we look for what are the consistencies. So what are the skills and the attributes, what's the physical capabilities that we know are needed to go into that senior environment? What's the emotional stability that's needed? Because you're asking younger players to go into, who are very successful at youth level, or maybe the W League, to go into a senior environment where you're no longer the best player. Sam Kerr is, or Emily Van Egnen is. And you're no longer, potentially in the passing practices, the center of the coach's attention, if it's something tactical. As an example. So we try to bridge that gap between environments, whether it be through the wellbeing stuff off the field and then obviously the on the field stuff. It's best preparing the individual for what's beyond us. And whether that's in football and going in the Matildas, or whether that's in other areas of life. There's some players we work with who are highly academic, and might not become top professional footballers. That's the nature of the business. So do they leave us as good people? And that's okay. If that's our ceiling, and we take out everything else, whether you're going to be a Matilda, a superstar, or whatever you're going to be, as long as you leave our environment better than how you came in, for that's that success.
Yeah. No, I like that. Again, can you just explain for our coaches out there, can you explain exactly what the Future Matildas program is and how that works?
Yeah, so the Future Matildas program is a fairly new initiative. Again, that was brought in by FA, and at the start of it, Gary Van Egnen was the head coach in Alan Stagic's initiative. I was involved in the program as an assistant coach initially / program manager, a couple of hats. So it was brought in to bridge the gap between being a young Matilda and a Matilda. Or maybe a junior Matilda and a Matilda, or maybe somebody who's been playing the NPL and you've had a cracking season and you get called into the Matildas. So players all over the country were identified as being high potential. So there was something special about them that meant potentially they could play international football. So technically, were they excellent, or maybe physically they were. There's a certain criteria that we look at in that arena, and not everybody ticks every box. There might be one thing that's their weapon that we just look to further develop. So that's how it started. And it also started as a great opportunity for our Matildas to train in that environment, in addition to their club stuff. So if they were home for extended periods of time, coming back from injury, so they were back in Australia, if they were already in Australia and just playing in sort of an NPL environment, we brought them all into Sydney and we would train them as a group. So naturally, the intensity of your training session is going to go up. You've got the best with the best. We felt that was an excellent initiative to roll out. We're only in we'll be going into year 4. So 3 years we've had the program up and running, and it's growing from strength to strength. Do we need more of these programs? Absolutely. And, are we always wanting more top-end resources and those sort of things? Well, I'm a coach, I want more. But, we've found that it's been a really nurturing space for those sort of players, like a Carly Rosbacken, as an example, to come in with us for 12 months, live with a homestay family, We train similar methods. So whoever's the senior national team coach at the time, obviously I've got good insights into what they want out of their players, and then we try and mimic it in our own training environment by playing boys, again, training the best with the best, off-field servicing, nutrition, psych, try and make it as professional as we can for the girls.
Yeah. And is it based in Sydney? It's not camp based? You're not bringing them in for camps on and off, or are they?
At the moment, it's based in Sydney, and there's some other programs that'll be up and running all over the country, which is exciting. So it's based in Sydney. We place the players with homestay families. We want that family connection for them still, so they go home at night and they're still a part of that. Most of them are quite young. So we've had players in the program from the age of 15 to some are 25, 26. I mentioned some of the Matildas training in the environment at different times. But it's just supplementary to their W League, because they're with us outside of the W League window, which with the current season is a chunk of the year. That's another thing. So it's great to have them all together, and I actually look forward to when we kick off in March/April next year.
Yeah. So you said it's been going for almost 4 years, but I guess almost 2 years of that we've had COVID, which I'm guessing sort of hit or limits the program, and how often you can get people together. In your, I think 2019, you went to the AFC Under-19 Women's Championship, and we finished fourth behind Japan and both Koreas. Some fantastic young players come through: Kyra Cooney-Cross, Princess Abini, Shay Evans, Courtney Nevin, and Mary Fowler whacked in a cool 4 goals for you. Not too shabby, that. Where are they at when you look at Japan and the Koreas at that age group, and you look at our girls? Are we technically behind them? Is it, how are we? Where are you taking those future Matildas, and what do we need to help them do to help them, and not just women's football, men's football in Australia continue to grow and get stronger?
Yeah, look, match minutes at the highest level is something that's important for our youngsters. So obviously the nature of the W League this year and last year, with a lot of more senior players moving abroad, and maybe clubs not having access to as many internationals. In saying that, it's great to have internationals in the W League, but that's provided greater opportunities for players, so that they're not going their NPL season and then being trained on players, as an example, in a W League environment, and then going away to a major tournament. Now they're going to have played significant match minutes for most of the year if they've been involved in a Future Matildas program. And I'm the first one to say this, and obviously I'm the head coach of that program, and we breed a lot of success, but there isn't one way for everyone. So, if you're listening out there who isn't in that program, it doesn't guarantee your Matildas jersey. Hard work and being a good person and being a good player does. But, so I'm very mindful of those perceptions, even though I do love my program and I know it's good. But, so there's a lot, and the match minutes thing is key, because the contact time we get as a national team, and the Future Matildas is a great example of a fantastic initiative by FA and AIS to invest in football. This investment's been all over the world for a long time. Australia's a big place geographically, so even getting players together, but these are things I'm saying that aren't excuses. They're barriers that have been identified, and we're doing something about it. It's
I think, Leah, across men's and women's football, if you go roll the clock back 20, 30 years, even when we played in Asia and we dominated, we were quick and strong and physically, that got us over across a lot of lines. But the money invested in football throughout Asia has been quite incredible over that time. And as a consequence, I think we've seen most countries get significantly stronger over that period of time.
Absolutely.
And that's the challenge that you face as a national coach, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep moving along. How has your coaching changed over your journey?
Look, I think it's developed immensely. When I look at when I first started coaching to where I am now, and the potential growth there as well, because there's certainly a lot to learn and a lot to experience. I think immensely. I think now I'm in more of a position with a good understanding of bringing others along the journey with you. Whether it's your staff and it's your playing group and those sort of things, your playing group is going to change quite often every cycle or whatever it might be, program year sometimes, or if you're head coach of a new club, or that's going to happen. But I think bringing others on the journey is something. When I think of when I first started coaching, I'll use an example, under 14s, MacArthur Rams, I was the head coach and I had a good support staff around me and those sort of things. But now it's sort of understanding the importance of placing good people around you and bringing them on that journey, delegating as a head coach. As I said, I started in Future Matildas as an assistant coach, as a program manager. They're completely different hats to a head coach. And that's probably what a lot of coaches face. You want to be a head coach, an assistant coach, or, for a while there, I was getting called in to do the scouting a lot with the national team, and I love it. Don't get me wrong, but I certainly wasn't. Scouting is something that I assist with, so you run that like becoming an analyst as well, which is nothing wrong with that. But I think it's that understanding of who you want to be, and I know now I want to be a head coach, and I am, and I become a lot more ambitious in that space as opposed to when I was an assistant coach or assistant/program manager.
Yeah. And it changes. We have a giggle here. As you can tell, I got the chuckles on because I think that most of us start life as an assistant coach, and you're in that environment. You're talking to the head coach all the time. But once you get your first head coaching role, you come to a quick conclusion that you don't know what you don't know, and go on a very steep learning curve.
100%. And my biggest advice would be there, and I don't know if you say this in football, you've got to get on the tools. So you have to learn your apprenticeship along the way before you become a head coach, because we see it time and time again, right? Where I'm so grateful for the roles I've had in scouting and analysis. And even at the moment, I'm doing a fair bit of commentary. So I'm watching football more, and there's just ways you can continue to develop yourself. And the broader your skill set, the more attractive and available you can become in other environments. So as I mentioned, I was utilized as an analyst at Scout, like a opponent analyst, not cutting Kate Crowan's grass. She was the head analyst for the Matildas. I'm not there, okay? But that taught me. I got to see so much international football from those tournaments. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we had a chat with John Aloisi. I think I called him an armchair coach when he was doing the commentary on Optus Sport before he got the gig at Western United down here in Melbourne. And he said the same thing. The fact you're in that commentary role, you spend so much time looking at football and analysing football, because that's what the role is. You're expected to talk and be an expert in the area. So, yeah, no, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just going to ask about a coaching mentor, and we've discussed that already. Have other sports influenced your coaching at all? Have you had an opportunity to look at other sort of team invasion sports and look at leadership development or culture development from there? Has that been something that you've looked at?
Yeah, I was involved in an AIS leadership course. Would have been about 2 years ago now, and that was a variety of head coaches, assistant coaches in all different sports across Australia. So it was a fantastic program. We had some contact time at the AIS, and we discussed different things from, barriers of being a female coach in our sports, some leadership stuff. I recently did some really good work with the Artram Group and Jane Jennings on different leaderships and profiling and those sort of things. So I've had a good exposure to some other sports, being at a sports high school as well. You're in a daily environment where there's coaches at our school who are involved with NRL environments who are athletics coaches, tennis coaches. This place, in terms of coach development, is a hidden gem. It's a daily environment where you're surrounded by top people in your field, but also other sports, and you talk to them obviously about what they do, but you watch them train next to you, and it's fantastic. And our sports director there, Joanne Kenny, she's fantastic in bringing everybody together. Some of the other national team staff actually work at the school that are involved in the men's and women's side, and we've just got a fantastic team and group of leaders embedded in one program every day.
I just love the fact that coaches in the main are just so willing to share and talk about the development of players, athletes and teams. It's just I don't think I can recall asking another coach about what they're doing and them not being interested in talking about it and sharing ideas. It's wonderful for that to happen.
Just like I said, that daily basis, and you mentioned a coach mentor before, and again, my full-time one is a absolute gem in Casey De Bruin, who's played a part in so many players' careers and is still doing it well into his 70s. But he's somebody who we have access all the sports to, and football obviously has saturated access to him on a daily basis. And his knowledge of the game and his knowledge of how to get the best out of coaches. I still know I can be wearing an Australian top right now, but I can hear him sometimes saying, "Lee, you bloody don't know anything," And you know what? That's what I need that. I need that person who's in my corner who's reminding me there's still more to go. It drives you. It's a space.
And that is the key to the mentoring, isn't it? It only really works when you can do that with someone that you trust and that you know that they've got your best interests at heart, and you can take all that feedback with the love and generosity that it's intended.
Oh, I'll be in trouble for saying this aloud because I know he's my biggest fan, and he'll say, "Make me look like I don't support you." He is my biggest fan. He only says that to me, a safe space. But that's something that it's a massive factor in who I am as a coach and hopefully where I end up.
Yeah. No, good. I like that, mate. Why do you do it? Why do you coach?
Oh, I've got the bug. I enjoy it. Yeah. There's no secret to it. You love it. I love all sides of it. It's just something that, again, I've grown up sports orientated. I'm super competitive. And then that's something that you mentioned, what do you learn along the way? It's how do you control that competitiveness, right? And you develop yourself in that space. But it's just a bug. And it's not really like a job.
No, go out and do what you love. Not too many people get to do that every day. That's great. What have been some of your most enjoyable moments so far?
Definitely seeing different players progress, whether it be, I mentioned before, whether they've gone into the Matildas. So most recently, there's been a fair few young Matildas go into that space, whether it be seeing players juggle year 12 and get 90 plus ATARs and still play football at a good level and those sort of things, or players who decide, football's given me enough and start their own businesses and are good people. That's it. At the end of the day, it's funny because when things happen at the time, they're great. But I'm finding now as I get older, maybe it's players who from 5 years ago message you because they want to get a coffee and they're just so appreciative of, their journey and the part you played that really becomes meaningful. We had a thing at school the other day where the Bulls were training and we were training next to the MacArthur Bulls A-League team, and two of our young lads had heard Casey doing the Casey thing on the field and, getting the best out of the kids. And they've, jumped over from when they finished their training, of course, and wanted to watch him in action again because they've got so much respect for him. And that's the kind of coach I want to be, because those guys don't have to do that. And they talk to the kids and they're just so grateful. Matty Ryan sent home a suitcase full of goalkeeper gloves to our school program. I can't imagine when you're coming home for Socceroos duty, it goes through your head that you're going to put 40 pairs of gloves in a suitcase, bring them to Australia, and give them back to the school program and the kids you don't even know. And those things for me and for our school, and I wasn't there when Matty Ryan was there. Brody Crane, our goalkeeper coach, was Trevor and Casey. Those are the kind of moments, though, that's the biggest reward.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. All right, we're getting close to the end here. What have been some of the most valuable lessons you've learned?
The resilience piece is one. Having good people around you who are on the same journey as you, that's important in terms of all your staffing and those sort of things. Almost, I want to say promoting, but recognizing that their ambition and they want to go on and, be at the highest level they can in our sport and supporting that journey. I think that's something that's been a good lesson. And how do you do that if you're the head coach? How do you support and make sure you're upskilling people around you to partake on their own individual journeys? I think they're important lessons. And then the last part, again, you have to, I mentioned the bug, you have to love this game, and you have to love the roles you're in, or it can be difficult.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. It just dawned on me, we've not really discussed the dilemma of coaching national teams during pandemics and having international tournaments cancelled. Firstly, what's that been like for you? And what have the young Matildas got coming up? What are you actually preparing the young Matildas for at this point in time?
Yeah, look, we had to be very flexible during the pandemic, and it allowed us to think a little bit laterally and a little bit innovative at times. So the key thing for us initially and along the way was, the players' well-being first, because some were, may have lost jobs, football becomes a little bit secondary to all those things, right? So that was the first part. So what we set up off the pitch, a lot of support networks around different athlete well-being workshops. We have regular cooking classes for them, because a part of being a professional athlete is moving away from home and getting out that fry pan, right? So, great opportunity just to immerse the players in more of those activities. We moved online Pilates, online football sessions the girls were in their garages with footballs and we had an instructor. I opted to bring in another voice so that it didn't become the daily redundance of me standing in front of them demoing, and also was getting tired too and the ankle a bit sore. So we actually utilised, it sounds nuts, it's what we had. And for the players, an authentic experience is to have a footballer in front of them, demonstrate online, because we're seeing a lot of home videos of different athletes doing exercises. Our S&C took care of all the running programs and those sort of things. So it was just about engagement, and it was okay if some days you didn't want to train. That's okay. Like, it was just a different world and a different opportunity. We're able to increase our playing pool. So typically we have 20 full scholarship holders in Future Matildas, and then up to 10-ish training players who might partake in some of the program, not all the program. We were able to extend to 30, 40 players because it was online. So more Victoria had access to us. More kids, in ACT, like some of the states, and again, all targeted players. So it certainly wasn't here's the link, everyone jump on. But it just gave us the opportunity to reach more people, engage in more coach education workshops online with the different states. Another opportunity to get one day better is how we to roll with it.
Yeah. And what is coming up, Leah? What are you currently preparing them for?
So we're awaiting for AFC to release our next cycle dates for qualification. So the FIFA World Cup for the U19s will go ahead in, I believe it's March. Australia didn't qualify for that through the last round of, last cycle. So how that works is the teams that qualified to the previous one get automatic qualification, which is fair. And we'll just look to build for our next cycle. A good chunk of the previous cohort, or still current cohort, are all in the W League setups across the country at the moment, which is fantastic. That they're in environments where they're potentially going to get match minutes. The professionalism of the clubs is on the up, which is fantastic. There's been a team added, more games. There's certainly a lot more in place than what might be in an assumption had the pandemic and didn't have anything and what's next. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's exciting times, obviously, with the Women's World Cup coming up in 2023 and the expanded A-League Women's I keep saying that right, the A-League Women's program with the additional team coming in. So more games and a World Cup on our front doorstep is just really, really exciting, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Is there I know we're in the Asian Football Confederation, and within that we're in the AFF, and I can't remember what Asian. Yeah, I can't remember what that actually means. The AFF, there's normally a tournament every couple of years as well. Is that? But that was cancelled. Was that in Uzbekistan?
That was cancelled, and the last time Australia competed in that's actually when we saw the emergence, I guess, of your Mary Fowlers. We took an under-23 aged team to that tournament, which was a senior tournament, and it was a combination of, as I said, those maybe fringe Matildas who, might not have broken in or getting a lot of game time in that senior setup, with a lot of our youngsters and, young players like Holly McNamara, who's at Melbourne City this year, who will feature, who's an absolute star. We took her at an early age to those tournaments as a 15-year-old. So we use it as a combination of blooding in some of our youngsters, giving game time to some of our older ones. If that opportunity arises again, I dare say it's a fantastic experience for Australia to compete in.
That's fantastic. Plenty to look forward to. Okay, final question for me from today, maybe.
That's it.
If you have one piece of wisdom you could offer coaches, what would that be?
Be consistent. Yeah, just be consistent in your messaging, be consistent in how you treat your group, in everything you do. Not everybody's always going to like the decisions you make. That's a part of the role. But just your consistency in that space, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah. No, I love that. What a great place to finish. Thank you, Leah Blayney. You've been listening to The Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media the Podcast Professionals. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, go to that's easy for me to say, www.footballcoachesauss.org.au. Buy a membership, renew a membership, or just find out a little bit about some of the resources we've got on there. Leah Blayney, head coach, Young Matildas, thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Thank you all you're doing for the development of young players and coaches. The empowerment of women is just so important for the future of our football. So keep up the great work.
Thanks, Gary.